Hello everybody, back again with another build video for the Elder Scrolls Online. I've got something a bit different today, but it's also similar. I decided to try out a more modern version, so to speak, of Sorcerer instead of the old 3 shield way that I'm used to playing. You will see 2 1vx's with this build, and what I really like about this build is the fact that it's incredibly flexible. Just like my previous build video, it's incredibly flexible. I'll go more in depth when I get to it, but this is not the only playstyle you can actually play with this build, and I've been enjoying it. So let's get into it. So, to start off with, I will go onto my stats, base stats, unbuffed completely. So we are sitting at 47.5 max mag, 1.4k mag recovery, which is a lot lower than usual, but I'll get into it. Stamina recovery is a little bit higher than usual, again I'll go into it. Max health, that is unbuffed, so that will go up, and the stamina is unbuffed as well, and that will go up, the same as the max magicka. The spell damage is obviously drastically increased on this build, and I'll explain why in a second. The spell penetration and physical penetration is unbuffed because we have major breach on this build. And the spell and physical resistance is unbuffed because, yet again, I am using Trial by Fire. Magicka, 64 points. Again, the build is incredibly strong. Mix this up to your heart's content. No need to put 64 into there. I'm just comfortable with 64 because I can play with low HP. If you cannot, do not hesitate to put more into health or stamina if you need to. The mage, I do this because I like high max magicka. Again, most of these picks are very flexible. If you feel as if you are missing more sustain in a certain area, chuck on the Atronach or even the Serpent. Easy. You know, it's very flexible. This is just my preferred. Again, these are just the stats. They're not that important really, this stat sheet. You don't need to be an ESO Plus member. When it comes to the consumables, I really enjoy using Ghastly Eyeball. However, again, this is a flex spot. I just like how much stats it gives in the right areas for me personally. If you feel as if you need more HP, chuck on more HP, and then mess about with the stats accordingly, because you will be using both stat pools on this build, and it's very flexible. Okay, and I am a Breton, as you can see here. Now, let's get into the skills. So, actually, no, I'll show you the build first. So, Lightning Staff of Ancient Grace, the staple of basically any of my builds. Far too good to give up for how much it gives you. Shock damage on the front bar. You could actually change this to physical damage to get Sundered status effect proc if you so desired. Don't change Sharpened, however, it's the most bang for your buck in PvP. Defending on the back bar, far too good to give up. Shooting in light, again, self-explanatory how good shooting is. Trials in heavy, I've went impen on this because we are not using the CP node in CP, so I've decided to put one more impen in here. One medium, different from my previous build video which did 5 light and 2 heavy, and the rest light armor. However, what you can do is use all medium armor if you desired, and change one of the shields for vigor if you so desired. The build is that strong. Necklace of Trainee in Triune. Triune is a flex spot, but I would definitely keep the weapon and spell damage on here, because you don't need the sustain in my opinion. Death Dealer's Feet in Arcane. Arcane is a flex spot. This is just my preferred style. Stamina recovery on this. You'll see why I'm using stamina recovery in a second. But I would not change the stam recovery glyph on here. You will most likely need it. And one swift trait on here, because with the skill that I will be showing you, I feel as if that you need one swift on this build, because one of the skills that I will be showing you does significantly slow you down in combat, and I feel as if swift compensates for that very well. And weapon and spell damage, this is probably a flex spot, because you have mass damage on this build, a lot more than the previous one. So, you know, that's a flex spot if you so desired. Now, let's get into the actual skills of this build. Bound Aegis, in my opinion, far too good to give up. Crystal Frags, self-explanatory on any Max Orc build. Hardened Ward, obviously really strong. Do not take it off on any Max Orc build. Shocking Soul, in my opinion, far too good to give up also. Endless Fury, just fantastic now with the buff to SORCs. And Dawnbreaker, this is also a flex spot. You can actually use Meteor if you so desired on this, but I wanted to switch it up a bit, and now I've started to use Dawnbreaker, which is actually very nice. The stun is very unpredictable, which catches people off guard, especially in a duel. It's excellent. No wonder people use this in a duel. Now, Haunt and Curse, time this with your frags, self-explanatory on a Max Orc. Harness Magicka, you could swap this out for Vigor if so desired, and go medium armor over light, and put one extra stam recovery glyph on, and in my opinion you should be able to sustain this. However, if you feel as if you need more sustain, again you can change the food to more stam sustain. It's very strong, the build, very flexible. Play around to your heart's content. This is just my preferred style. Degeneration, I just think it's the best bang for your buck in terms of what you get from a skill that gives you major brutality and sorcery, but you can change this to Surge if you so desired, no problem whatsoever. Streak, again, self-explanatory. You can change it to Ball of Lightning if you so desired, flexible. Dark Conversion. This skill I haven't used for many years, but I decided to start to use it, and it's incredibly strong. I forgot how strong it actually is, and in my genuine opinion, I think this skill is actually more busted than actual Hardened Ward, because you can just Magicka, you know, you just have no issue with Magicka sustain with this. You can just streak away, and then you can just go back up to full max mag. It's very, very strong. I genuinely do think this skill is stronger than Hardened Ward, but that's just my opinion. And Life Giver. However, right, what you can do is this. You can actually put Overload on the back bar or on the front bar, and what you can do then is you can basically burst people down with Overload, swap to your front bar if you have enough ult left, and then use Dawnbreaker. It's incredibly strong in a duel, and it's very strong in open world too. However, I like the survivability of Life Giver. especially in a 1vx situation. And in my genuine opinion, if your rotation is good enough on a sorcerer, especially on this build, because it has so much damage, you do not need overload on here. However, you can keep Life Giver and just swap Dawnbreaker for overload or Meteor. Play around to your heart's content. It's very, very flexible. Now, let's get into the champion points. Green Tree makes absolutely no difference to the build. Now, Arcane Supremacy. Very good, in my opinion. Gives you max mag, gives you more healing, gives you more damage, gives you more sustain. Very good. Master at Arms, more damage. Literally can't go wrong with more damage. In the previous build, I used Deadly Aim. However, since you have so much damage on this build, and you are not as tanky per se, I have took Deadly Aim off, and I have put on 2 defensive CP, which is Duelist Rebuff and Ironclad. However, if you are doing duels, I would highly recommend taking Duelist Rebuff off and putting more damage on. That's just me, because you don't need to be as tanky in a duel. Red CP, Pain's Refuge. Never take this off, as I've said in previous build videos. Pain's Refuge is the best CP in the game for PvP, period. Never take it off on any build you see on YouTube for PvP. Don't take it off. Relentlessness, just my preferred one. Again, flex spot, very good for gankers, so I wouldn't take it off. Sustained by Suffering, incredibly good on this build because it gives you everything. It gives you mag and stab recovery, which you'll be using on this build, and Bastion. Basically, you need it because you're using shields. Now, that is my updated build video for ESO in the latest patch. You can still use my previous build. The previous build just works as well. So if you preferred the previous build, do not hesitate to still use that. I'm just giving some people some more insight on what I have been using recently that you might have seen me use in streams. And I'll show you now 2 very good 1vx's that I got on this exact build to prove that it works. But do not forget that this is incredibly flexible and you can mess about with all the stats because it's so strong to begin with. And I very much hope you enjoy the build and the gameplay that comes next, and I will catch you in the next one.